And the Citadel Gray Line is back on. Hello, I'm John Rawl on this, the finale of the 2020 football season for your Citadel Bulldogs, as the Dogs went up to West Point last week and fell in a heartbreaking game to Army 14-9. I'm joined by Jeff Hartsell of the Charleston Post and Courier here on this all-dog show. We also have our very special co-host emeritus back on with us, and that is one Jim Waddill. And he's standing by. We're going to have him on to talk about all the many episodes that we enjoyed having Jim Waddill as part of this show. And for the very first time, Jim Waddill is going to be joining us right there. Visually, you're going to see the great Jim Waddill at his Citadel Gray Line broadcasting headquarters. Hello, Jim.
Hello, John and Jeff. It's great seeing you again.
Yes. Class of 1960, hanging in strong, looking good, making his television debut here on the Gray Line.
Man, I tell you what, there's a big difference between video and the old audio. I didn't know I looked so good at the age of 82.
Yeah,
well,
you
I'm
look
just glad
good.
I'm just glad you made the bed.
Yes, that's what we call in
right.
Citadel world a rack, and it looks like you just rolled out of the rack to join us here, Jeff. You're looking good as always, and we got to talk about Bulldog sports as the Citadel wraps up this abbreviated 2020 season.
Yep, the Dogs finished the fall season with an 0-4 record. Not what they would have hoped for going in, but of course it was a very difficult schedule. And I think the performance at Army on Saturday puts a much better twist and a much better taste in their mouths as they head into the winter months here, and then look forward to, we still don't know what the spring is going to look like as far as football goes, but allegedly there will be some sort of spring SoCon season. So they have that to look forward to as well.
Nice use of the journalism word allegedly there. We welcome your calls here. If you have a question or comment, you can post something at our Facebook page. That's Citadel Gray Line on Facebook, or give us a ring. We got the Charleston Low Country number of 843-779-8496. We would love to hear from you. Again, we're wrapping up this 6-week edition of Citadel Gray Line, hoping that we might have a little spring football. We'll talk about that as we progress here on the Citadel Gray Line. But yes, sure enough, the Citadel went up to West Point last week, and it was a game where you were biting your nails. You were hoping after the first quarter, where the Citadel held a 3-0 lead there to the Black Knights, that this might just be the day, and it was sure looking that way for a good while, Jeff.
Yeah, they ended up losing 14-9, and it was really I thought it was an entertaining game, kind of old school option football, and judging by the response on Twitter, I think a lot of people felt the same way. It was good to see old school option football, a defensive struggle. Citadel's defense really played well against Army's vaunted triple option. Army came in averaging 350 rushing yards a game. Citadel held them to 150. So a great job by the Citadel D. They just couldn't get enough going on offense to give themselves a chance at the end. Of course, Army almost blew it at the end with what I thought was some very strange play calling in the final minutes. But the Black Knights escape with a 14-9 victory, and they stop. They've won. Now they've won 2 of their last 4 against the Citadel.
2 of their last 4, but these games have all been extremely close, going back to the early 90s when the Citadel, as we talked about last week, actually won in 1991 and 1992, lost by 1 point in the 1994 season, I think it was.
The last 4 scores have been 14-9, 25-24, 15-14, and 20-14. And Army won the last 2 of those, and Citadel won the first 2. So, yeah, extremely close games between the Citadel and their big brothers at Army West Point.
No, they're our little brothers. Hey,
okay.
Did you hear? Go ahead.
They're the Citadel of the North.
Citadel of the North.
Did you hear or have the comments from Coach Munkin of Army after the game? He had some nice things to say about Brent Thompson's team.
I did. He said they outplayed us, especially their defense outplayed our offense, and they beat us up, was his quote after the game. So something that the Citadel could feel good about. It was their best performance of the season. obviously, after losing to South Florida, Clemson, and Eastern Kentucky. And I think a key was the open date they had before the Army game. They were able to get back to basics with their practices a little bit, and they had some tough practices going into the Army game. I think earlier in the season, you're trying to manage the COVID, you're trying to keep your roster healthy. Maybe you don't practice as much of an edge as you usually would during that stretch. And I think in the 2 weeks they had before the Army game, they really got back to basics and had some tough practices, and they really played with an edge, especially on defense against Army.
I want to remind everybody you are watching and listening to Citadel Gray Line from CRM Sports, and we are presented to you each and every week by IPS Packaging and Automation. Since 1976, IPS Packaging and Automation has been providing e-commerce manufacturers and companies with the very best packaging products and automation in the entire industry. IPS offers a complete line of packaging products from stretch films and 3M tapes to corrugated boxes, strapping, and automation. IPS Packaging and Automation will analyze and streamline your current methods to improve your packaging process. It's very simple. Pick up your old telephone and give them a call at 800-277-7007 to learn more, or visit them on the web at ipack.com. IPS Packaging and Automation, a proud supporter of Citadel Athletics. And Jim Waddill, each and every Friday when you get ready to take all those bundles of cash you've got stored away there at your bunker, you can call up IPS Packaging and Automation and get some products to help wrap up those wads of cash.
Yes, sir. There's a lot. I've lost track of some of it. Some of it's on the mattresses and all kinds of places. But yeah. Thanks for that reminder.
Yes. So, Jim, I know you have something to say about how this 4-game season went. Your thoughts on what happened here this year with Brent Thompson's team?
Well, I saw 3 of the 4 games. I missed the Eastern Kentucky game, which, of course, was our only home game. But I saw the South Florida, Clemson, and, of course, the Army games. And I was especially impressed with the Army game. I thought, as Jeff was saying, I thought our defense was very stout, very impressive, not stout from the standpoint of perhaps weighing as much as the Army line. But no, our defense was very stout, and Army had to reserve to pitch outs and passes later in the game to pull it out. And I was also impressed with the offensive performance as well, especially the I can't remember the status since we're going to entertain an FCS Southern Conference schedule in the spring of 2021. I can't recall if Brandon Rainey I guess he'll graduate next year unless he's already graduated. I was going to ask you if Brandon Rainey will still be around for the 2021 spring schedule.
I don't think so. He and Raleigh Webb, the fine receiver, will both earn their master's degrees in December.
Okay.
And I know Brandon has a job lined up, ready to go. Raleigh Webb, I think, might have a shot at tryout camp at the pro level. So those 2 guys, I think, will be ready to move on. And that's part of the shame about what happened to this fall season. Those 2 guys and some others, really, they came back for their 5th year. They were aiming to compete for a SoCon championship this fall, and it's just not going to happen due to what's going on in the world this year. And there's another young man such as Willie Eubanks, the All-American linebacker. He's not likely to return in the spring, in my opinion, because he also will have a chance at a NFL tryout camp of some sort, or a free agent signing, something like that, if he doesn't get drafted. So, yeah, the roster that they had put together for fall 2020 will never get to play for a SoCon championship, and that's part of the heartbreak of this 2020 season. On the other hand, they got to play 4 games. They got to get out there and compete and play the game they love. I think that was good for their mental and emotional and physical health to get out there and play those games. And at least they got to play one more time at home at Johnson-Hagan Stadium.
Jeff, what do you make of the fact that Brandon Rainey in this Army game had a little bit of a tough time, and Jalen Adams comes in the second half, and we never saw Brandon Rainey again after Adams started taking snaps?
Yeah, it was a sad way for Brandon to go out after all he's done for Citadel football. Played fullback early in his career, played quarterback later in his career, and of course last year had such a great season, accounting for 30 touchdowns. And his name will be up there among in the record books as far as rushing and touchdowns and things like that by a Citadel quarterback. So it was too bad he had to go out that way, not playing in the second half. But Jalen Adams is your starter of the future. He'll be the starting quarterback most probably next spring, when and if they play football. And I think you saw against Clemson and against Army some of the things that Jalen is able to do with his feet, turning bad plays into good plays. And he just needs to polish up his execution of the option offense. And, of course, as always, work on the passing game at the Citadel. But I think Jalen is the starter of the future.
And who
I was very impressed with
with
Jalen Adams. Sorry, didn't mean to talk over you, John.
No, go ahead. I'll go ahead and finish your thought, Jim, and then I was going to ask Jeff if Jalen's going to be the quarterback, apparent quarterback of the future, who's going to be backing him up? Jim, go ahead and finish your thought, please.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Jalen Adams, as you mentioned, the particularly, I guess the second half of the Clemson game when he ran some good yardage and he looked very efficient at quarterback with pitch outs and what have you. And even though we very rarely passed the ball, I'm even somewhat impressed with his arm from what I saw of it. Maybe a little more of a natural passer than we're accustomed to seeing in the triple offense, a triple option. But yeah, I was very impressed with him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him next year. He has a lot of speed, agility, and I think more than adequate passing ability for the type of offense we run.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to in the Mike Houston, Brent Thompson era, Citadel quarterbacks have been more power runners. You think of Aaron Miller, Dominique Allen, and Brandon Rainey. Not a lot of speed there. So it'll be interesting to see what a little faster quarterback can do, what kind of difference he can make in this option. Brandon Rainey, you could always count on him for 3 tough yards and a first down on 3rd and 3 or 4th and 3. But it'll be interesting to see what a little more speed at that position might do for the offense.
Let me throw in one more quick question for me. What about all these opt-outs that we had because of COVID-19? I know that you got to help me with the name, but the star running back that transferred from VMI to be a grad student that opted out, and I think it was something like 30 players that opted out. So what about all these opt-outs?
It was only 11 who
11?
ended up opting out. The first day of practice, if you remember, they had about 30 who were not at the first day of practice. Yeah. But they ended up with 11 players who opted out, including 6 running backs. So, most of the starting backfield did not play this fall, or what would have been the starting backfield. The young man from VMI, Alex Ramsey, has entered the transfer portal, but he has not announced a transfer yet. So in theory, he could come back if he's remained eligible, going to his graduate classes and all that. So in theory, he could come back. All the kids who opted out can come back in the spring. They all remained on scholarship. They didn't lose any eligibility during this COVID season. So they can all come back in the spring if they feel comfortable doing so as far as their health and their family situations dictate.
All right, well, thank you for that.
We want to remind you that Citadel Gray Line is presented in part not only by IPS Packaging and Automation, but also BigRedPalmetto.store. In just a few moments, we'll have Jim Waddill reach into his steel trap memory and help us with a knob knowledge question. And if you're the lucky winner of the knob knowledge question this week, you get a $25 gift certificate to BigRedPalmetto.store. And we appreciate what they've done here this first year of working with us on the Citadel Gray Line, and a lot of people have benefited with those $25 gift certificates. So hang on, we've got a really cool old core type knob knowledge question headed your way from Jim Waddill. You got one over there in the corner that you can pull out for us, Jim?
Well, John, I'll pull out one that never was knob knowledge that caused me to miss a lot of meals until after second rest. But really never was knob knowledge.
Right.
There's a lot of humor that went with it, but that's what I was prepared to talk about.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to what that is. So stand by again for the knob knowledge courtesy of BigRedPalmetto.store. One observation I had after watching this Army game this past week, and you kept hearing about how guys were seventh stringers and such for the Citadel. Let's keep in mind that all of college football here in 2020 in this unusual season, every program has at least one arm behind their back. They've either had opt-outs, they're not sure what's going to happen, they're shifting schedules around. It's in many ways been a complete disaster. So for any team to get up and play is quite an accomplishment. Now at the Citadel with so many opt-outs and the fact that you're an FCS program, one of the few playing in the country, Jeff, in my expert, and that's air quotes there, expert analysis of the situation, it just feels like the Citadel had two hands behind their back here in this shortened season.
Well, I think it's fair to say they did not have the roster that they anticipated having and that they could have had. And then you factor in playing three FBS teams for the first time in school history. They played three FBS teams in one season. So that's a big ask. If they had their full roster playing those four teams, I think they would have taken South Florida into the fourth quarter with a chance to win that game. And obviously they would have had a chance to beat Army coming as close as they did. They did not play well that day against Eastern Kentucky. Normal circumstances, you would like to think that would be a more competitive game. But, it was what it was, as they say. And I think in the end, it was good for the young men to have those games to play rather than missing out, especially for the seniors, missing out on their final season, sitting in the barracks in their bubble, not having the outlet of competing in the sport they love. And for some of them, the sport they came back to play, when they didn't have to. They could have moved on with their careers and left the Citadel, but they came back to play that final season. So I think it was good for them to play. Overall, they earned about $950,000 in guarantee money over the fall. That will go a long way toward plugging some big holes in the budget. Of course, Citadel officials will tell you that's not the main reason they played, but it doesn't hurt. And in a time when a lot of schools are having to cut sports, Citadel has not had to do that yet. So cross your fingers as far as that goes.
Jeff, since the Army game, have you had a chance to have a conversation with Brent Thompson, head coach of the Bulldogs?
Just in the post-game interviews, yeah.
Okay. All right. So what do you expect going forward when decisions will be made about the spring, about players, whether they're going to stick around or more? What do you anticipate with the way the calendar
Well,
looks?
I think an announcement from the Southern Conference should be coming any day now about what a spring schedule might look like. The latest I hear is that they're looking at an 8-game schedule in the spring. So 8 conference games because it's a 9-team league. So 8 conference games. That would put the Citadel over. You're limited to 11 games in a calendar year. So that would put the Citadel at 12. So they might have to get a waiver to play that 8th game in the spring. If they don't get a waiver, then they might have to forfeit that game or something like that. But the latest I hear is the SoCon's looking at an 8-game schedule in the spring. That announcement has not been made yet, though.
Okay. Well, maybe they can forfeit one of the 4 games I just played.
We will see.
You can help them with that waiver. You're pretty good with writing up stuff, so we'll be watching for you to fire.
In my opinion, I think a waiver would be granted. I don't see why it wouldn't in this, special time that we're going through when everything is so up in the air, and the players, nobody has been charged with a year of eligibility this year. I don't see why they wouldn't grant a waiver in the spring so that teams in that situation could compete for a conference championship.
Jeff, I heard you talk about it's likely that that these guys who already had graduated, I think they graduated 2 years ago, Brandon Rainey and Raleigh Webb, I think should already be done with their graduate program at the Citadel. I wanted to ask you, because they have evidently decided to move on along their talent to another, to I guess the professional, well, for Brandon, the professional world of going in and working a job. Raleigh Webb hopes maybe he can get paid a little money to play some football professionally. What about the great defensive player for the Dogs, Willie Eubanks, who was an all-SoCon top player? Have you heard anything about his future?
Well, he'll be draft eligible this year, and he definitely is a pro prospect of some sort. Now, whether he's a draftable player, whether he signs as a free agent or something like that, remains to be seen. I think he'll get a grade from the scouts sometime this winter or in the spring to help him make that decision. But he could return in the spring. He could return next fall, or he could decide that this is his time to go on and see what he can do at the professional level. I don't think individually he has anything left to prove at the FCS level. He was the SoCon Defensive Player of the Year last year and played very well in these 4 games this fall. So I think he's proven himself as much as he can at the FCS level. We should also mention who had a super 4 games this fall as well, the safety on the Citadel's defense. Not to say that he might be moving on or anything, but just to acknowledge that he played really well this fall and was the FCS National Player of the Week by one organization after that Army game.
Yeah,
so
Sean Thomas Faulkner.
Shout out to Sean Thomas Faulkner as well.
Yeah, so he got some great praise there with a tremendous performance against the Black Knights. And I want to point out, the name slips me, but where he's from certainly does not slip me. Our only Bahamian on the Citadel roster, as I think it was the Bahamian that last year around the same time his family had their home there in the Bahamas, and the little island they were from was devastated by the hurricane last year. And I think it was that guy that was seen crying as the Citadel wrapped up that 4-game schedule in a loss to Army. And that's why when people talk about these games don't matter, in many ways what happened here this past fall doesn't matter. None of the other FCS teams in South Carolina were even playing but the Citadel here this year, and long-time games against rivals like Furman and Wofford didn't happen. But when you think it doesn't matter, then you see those closing moments of the game there at Mikey Stadium, and when you see the tears flowing from a big offensive lineman like that, Jeff, it just brings back that this is not just out there goofing around. These guys really get into what they do.
Right, and actually that was Thomas Crawford, the offensive tackle, who the cameras focused in on at the end of the Army game, and he's an interesting story. He's commissioning into the Air Force and wants to be a pilot. So he'll have a decision to make whether to come back in the spring. A football injury could damage his chances of being an Air Force pilot. So he'll have to decide whether it's time for him to move on and go into the Air Force and learn how to be a pilot. So yeah, these guys I think Thomas said he started playing when he was 5 or something like that. So they put 10, 12, 15 years into this sport that they love. They earn a Division I scholarship at a place like the Citadel. And then when it comes to an end, as it did for some of them at Mikey Stadium on Saturday, it can be a very emotional time. And I think you saw that. And a great job by the CBS Sports Network cameras to catch Thomas and some of his teammates in those emotional moments. And I wanted to mention something kind of interesting if you want to read another perspective on the game and on Army football. If you guys remember John Feinstein, who wrote A Season on the Brink about Bobby Knight and has gone on to write many other sports books, he writes a column after each game that's posted on the Army website about Army football. So be interesting to go check out what John Feinstein wrote about the Citadel Army game.
Apologies to Thomas Crawford. I had you mistaken for the player that was on the roster last year from the Bahamas. Crawford is from Louisville, Kentucky. And so I'm sorry. It's just something about those big offensive linemen, Jeff. I get them confused sometimes.
That happens. That was Elijah Lowe, the young man from the Bahamas.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jeff, athletically for the Citadel, what's going on? What are we? I just heard today that college basketball can start practicing. What else is going on there at 171 Moultrie Street?
Right. College basketball practice starts today. The College of Charleston has announced their attendance policy. They're going to have about 30% capacity at TD Arena, which amounts to about 1,500 fans. I anticipate the Citadel will have about the same limit at McAllister Fieldhouse. And we should mention it wasn't just football. We've said this several times on this show. Competing this fall, soccer, volleyball, cross country, rifle, and women's golf at the Citadel all competed this fall. And the women's soccer team did especially well, beating Mercer for the first time, playing number 12 ranked Pitt to 2 one-goal games. So really a good step forward for the Citadel women's soccer team. They will play their final match of the season this Friday, I believe, on campus. I think it might be on the parade deck. So if you're in Charles Friday, come check out that women's soccer team.
And Jeff, just for our new audience here that missed out on the interview that you had last year at Toast in Mount Pleasant, the soccer team coach dropped by, and maybe we've helped give them an extra couple of energy points to get some of these victories here this year. Go ahead, pronounce that coach's name. I know it's a little bit of a challenge for some of us.
I'll leave that up to you.
It's okay. I think it's Siren Trakor.
Siren Trakor sounds right.
Yeah.
But he's done a fantastic job recruiting. He's got 3 grad student transfers this year that have really made a big impact. And, of course, the young lady from Japan, who is one of the best players in the SoCon and probably in the Southeast in Division I. So really fantastic job of recruiting. And, of course, the volleyball team had a big win over Mercer to end their season as well. So progress made on a lot of fronts this fall.
Yeah, Japan seems to be a hotbed for Citadel sports. Not only did it help get us a great beat writer in Jeff Hartsell. Jeff, the other week I was goofing off wondering whatever happened to the Citadel football player that came from your alma mater there, high school alma mater, and I saw that I think he's still on the roster.
Still on the roster, playing on special teams, Hayden Williamson from Kubasaki High School in Okinawa, Japan. Go Dragons.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. So a lot to be on the lookout for Citadel Bulldog fans and such. Anything, I know you covered a board of visitor meeting. Anything else school-wise we should be on the lookout for here as we get ready to shut this thing down for a few months?
Not that I can think of. The cadets will go home after Thanksgiving and won't return until the spring. And I think they're looking forward to getting a little bit more back to normal as far as the campus goes in the spring. But from all appearances, they've done a pretty good job managing the coronavirus on campus. They haven't had to shut down in-person classes or anything like that. So I think their plan has worked fairly well from what I can tell this fall.
I have one quick question.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
What's the update on the sophomore shuffle?
That one.
I don't know, but
Jeff were to know that, then he just has earned even more respect from me. I don't think Jeff keeps up with the commandant's office too much.
This is just my opinion, and I am not a Citadel grad, so take that for what it's worth.
Yeah,
a guy who forced the resignation of the chairman of the board of visitors did not do the Citadel any favors. Their accreditation is now not under threat, but being inspected by the agencies that do those things. Political influence on the board of visitors or the board of trustees at a school is not a good thing. It's frowned upon by those accrediting agencies. Mm-hmm. So the Citadel is going to have to answer questions to these accrediting agencies about what happened there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that not a good thing for the Citadel. You know, the
Well,
Board of
it's a
Visitors.
pretty big topic among some of my old core classmates right now.
Yeah.
That's one reason I was asking. But yeah, I didn't think they were going to come up with a new song. You know, that hidey hidey he, hidey 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 ho. It's a little old boogie. It's a crazy song. Hopefully, they aren't going to change the words to that. It's the sophomore shuffle. It's a crazy song. I just had to get that in. Yeah. You got to remember now, I'm from the old core.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you definitely are from the
Okay.
old core. Jeff, I do want to ask while we have some of the administrative things on our mind. I think I want to give them a good pat on the back here. The Citadel as an institution, I think, still so far managing the whole coronavirus and keeping cadets enrolled and classes going on. Am I right on that?
Yeah, as I just said, I think they've done a good job from all appearances of executing their plan. You know, they had the athletes in a bubble in one barracks, and kind of everybody, I don't know how exactly to describe it, but everybody who had a similar task or was in a similar place in their Citadel, does that make any sense, were assigned in each barrack, so they could create as much of a bubble as they could to keep the cadets from coming in contact with the virus. So there's a COVID tracker on the Citadel website. I have not checked it recently, but as I said, they have not had to halt in-person classes or send the kids home early or anything like that. So from all appearances, they've done a good job of managing the virus. Everybody tells me that the testing procedure on campus is second to none across the nation. You can get your results within a matter of an hour or two after taking the test, if not faster. So kudos to the Citadel for taking the virus seriously, in my opinion, and doing a good job of managing it.
One other thing that happened since we were last on the air, as soon as he got off the air with us, as it appears last week, Duger Balcom went on campus and went on to the parade deck there, and he joined his player, his senior there, Hayden Brown. And Jeff, I know you tweeted something out about this. They had some kind of a community type, unity type event there on the grounds of the Citadel.
Right. They called it a unity formation, a unity and respect event. And I know the athletes have been wanting to organize something along those lines, like you've seen on other campuses across the country. And Hayden Brown, the Bulldog basketball player, was kind of the driving force behind organizing this thing that they had last week. And they formed 5 rings on the parade deck, had a moment of silence, and then a young lady, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head, read out a statement that she and Hayden and some other cadets had worked on, just about unity and respect, not only in the Corps, but, you know, in all of our society. And Duger Balcom took part, Brent Thompson took part. So it was a good thing to see that the Citadel athletes were able to kind of be the spearhead behind that movement.
All right. Again, Jeff from the PC is how you can find Jeff on Twitter, and he's constantly putting out mostly athletic events at the Citadel, but sometimes anything that is newsworthy coming from the Citadel campus, Jeff often will tweet that information out. And if you're lucky to live in the area code of 843, pick up a copy of the Post and Courier on a newsstand near you. We're going to talk to Jim Waddill, find out what in the world he's been up to. But before we do that, Jim, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you to work. It's time here on the Citadel Gray Line to ask our knob knowledge question for the week. This is our final episode for 2020. And if you are a lucky person that can maybe text an answer of what you think the answer to the trivia question is, text that to 843-779-8496. And if you're the lucky person that tweets the correct answer in, we'll send you a $25 gift certificate to BigRedPalmetto.store. That has over 300 Citadel items on sale. You've seen me model the Citadel tartan shoes on this show. You've seen me hold up the various mugs, the clock, the sweatshirts, T-shirts, and more. 300 plus items, officially licensed items, all at bigredpalmetto.store. Jim Waddill, what is this week's Knob Knowledge question?
Well, I'm afraid I came up with a bad choice, John. I'm not sure anybody would ever get it right, but here we go. I'm prepared for it. So
well, we won't. I always try to get it right.
I always try to add a little comedy in whatever I say, so you'll have to excuse me.
Okay.
But it's a true story. True story. When I was a 6'2", 140-pound knob from Holly Hilton Citadel, I had began with three interesting sophomores. Plebes, as we used. Well, anyhow. Imitation plebes, sophomores on my mess, and they kept asking me questions. What is electricity, and all those were easy because I thought I'd memorize everything plus some. But then one day, one sophomore, glorified plebe, that's the term I was searching for, one sophomore who had a Marine Corps background asked me what a POU was. And I never had heard of it, never had done any research on that. And I said, don't know, sir. Anyhow, I had to brace. So I turned the plate over after second rest. And next day, same thing the next day. On about the fifth day when I'd probably lost down to 100.
Don't give away the answer, Jim. You got to ask the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. See, I haven't been through this before. Okay. All right. Well, the question was, that ruins my story. But anyhow, the question was, what is a POU?
POU, and that comes from the old Corps. If you know what a POU, and I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with that term, so you might have to go back to the really old days of the Citadel back in 1842 to find out the answer for this one. If you know the answer of what a POU is, you just text that answer to 843-779-8496, and the first correct answer for that wins a $25 gift certificate courtesy of bigredpalmetto.store. POU. That's a new one on me. I'll be honest, I've heard a lot of stuff in Citadel lore. That one is a new one to me, so I'm looking forward to finding out exactly what the answer to that is. And again, just text that to 843-779-8496 if you know that. Jim, you have not been on with us ever before visually, and now you joined here. The gang got back together. The band reunited today for our very first visual trio of you and Jeff Hartsell and myself, and we're here talking to the Citadel Greyline audience, a ever-growing Greyline audience, as we bring this show now in our 13th year and more than 275 episodes of this show now in the books. And you were a big part of roughly 220 of those, and now we got you back on here for a historic video appearance. So Jeff and I want to know what the heck you've been doing.
Well, we're in Maggie Valley, as you said earlier. We've been coming back and forth, but we spent most of the year going back to the beginning of March, just before COVID-19 became official. We were up in Maggie Valley when COVID-19 hit, and we self-quarantined until about the middle of May. Went back to South Carolina for a few days to a week. See Diane's parents, among other things. Her father just turned 100, and her mother's 97.
Wow.
They're still doing as well as can be expected in independent living at the Oaks outside of Orangeburg. But we came back to Maggie Valley, and we've been back another time since, back and forth. But most of our year since early March has been spent in Maggie Valley, and we thoroughly enjoy it up here. Have even thought once or twice about changing our legal domicile to Maggie Valley, but we got too many things going on in South Carolina right now to even give that a second thought. So we're enjoying ourselves. Diane, bless her heart, she's put up with me for 57 plus years. She deserves a plaque like you bestowed upon me. But with my 220 or 250 episodes or whatever it was a while back, John, she deserves maybe a couple plaques for putting up with me for 57 plus years.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
But I was reminiscing last night after you had called me about being on the show, and And I remember the old Citadel.libsyn.com, and in fact, you can still go to that old website. You probably have other ways now which are preferred, but you can still go to Citadel.libsyn, Libsyn.com, and pull up Citadel Gray Line, and you can click onto the archives and go all the way back to the first show, which is my first show, obviously my first show also with you and Jeff, March 5 of 2008. I was exactly 2 months short of my 70th birthday, and now I'm 82, almost 82 and a half. But it's been the years I spent were memorable years, and I can't say thank you enough for inviting me on originally, and the years that I spent on those 200 plus episodes. And sometimes I have regrets that I sent you an early retirement notification so that we could do other things in life.
Jeff and Jim, both, Jim's not lying when he tells you can go to citadel.libsyn.com and pull up all of our episodes going back to that March episode of 2008. Is that right?
Yeah, March 5, 2008, Tandy Rice, class of 61.
There he is talking right now.
With our Band of Gold spotlight.
Who was a former regimental commander, lives in Knoxville, Tennessee.
The late Tandy Rice, our first guest, and all of our episodes are right there. You can listen to them, and just a couple of clicks of a button, you can really entertain yourself. What else you got to do during the coronavirus? You can sit back and listen to almost 300 episodes of Citadel Gray Line. But we sure have enjoyed having you on through the years, and it's always good to catch up with you and see you, in this case, here on Citadel Gray Line. And
John,
yes.
Is the Gray Line still on iTunes?
Yeah, it is. In fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the only time my daughter has ever thought I was cool, when she found out I was on iTunes.
Yeah. There's a picture of it. How it. That's not a good. Yeah. But yeah, it's on iTunes. Every time we put it up visually, within a couple of minutes, it is also turned into an audio podcast. So if you're going to be driving, we don't want you watching us. We want you to hear us. So go find us in iTunes, and every single episode we've ever done is right there in iTunes. Your daughter, she's got plenty of stuff to. Don't ever let her tell you she's bored, Jeff. She can go back and listen to 13 years worth of Citadel Gray Line.
There you go.
All right.
She found that out. She said, "Oh, wow, that's cool."
Yeah, don't tell her. It's really not that hard to get on iTunes, but we'll just we'll keep that between us here. But it's been a pleasure talking to both of you, seeing both of you, and we'll be right back here if there is Citadel football to be played in the spring months. Jeff, we've talked about this before. In your best estimation, if there is spring football, it's going to start when?
Mid-February, I would think, would be the start date. In order to get 8 games in, the FCS playoffs will begin in late April, I think. So, and they're scheduled to conclude. I think the championship game is in mid-May. So in order to get those 8 games in, they'd have to start pretty early. It's going to be cold.
Yeah, nothing like a trip to, let's say, Johnson City or Lexington, Virginia in a spring football season.
That is correct. And that's about the time they would be holding spring practice. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the Citadel always starts spring practice very early. One of the first teams in the country to start spring practice.
And core day.
Yep. And so we should be hearing any day now. I wouldn't be surprised if it was this afternoon or tomorrow or Friday about the SoCon's plans for the spring season.
Okay. One thing I wanted to point out here, it's very, I guess, with all the distractions, period, that are happening in the world that we currently find ourselves in, one of the big things in the Citadel world is to attend, if you're an alum, come back and come to homecoming, you have your big reunion. And this year, if you're a member of, let's say, the classes of 1995, which would have had its 25th reunion, or the class of 70 that would have had its 50th reunion, all those classes that they put on their calendar years in advance, coming back for a big reunion weekend, we didn't have homecoming. I don't know Jim, maybe you've heard in some of the well, you're a class of 60. Y'all should have had some kind of big blowout here this year. I guess you could have had that. I feel for all the classes that were scheduled to have a big alumni type event.
Well, your 60th reunion, which would have been mine, that's the last 5-year reunion that the Citadel, so to speak, sponsors. In other words, to put it another way, that's the last time your class can march out on the Johnson-Hagan Stadium field and be recognized. Beyond age 60, I guess they give up on you after your 60th. But the 60th is the last, I'm going to call it Citadel recognized, sponsored 5-year reunion. So yeah, we were all set up for a real biggie on homecoming, and now that's been rescheduled for Core Day of 2021. It won't be the same, but then again, if they have a home football game scheduled for Core Day weekend, maybe we'll still get our last march onto the field at Johnson-Hagan Stadium.
What's the date of Core Day?
Well, it's always, I don't have the exact date. It's usually about the maybe the second weekend of March.
Okay. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. I've been thinking that they might go out of their way to schedule a home game since they didn't have a quote-unquote homecoming game. They might go out of their way to schedule a home game, maybe it'd all be conference games. Schedule a home game on Core Day weekend so that the classes that missed marching onto the field at last homecoming will be able to show their presence. And my class is particularly important. We've lost a number of our classmates who've gone to be with the Lord even since last homecoming. But I say last homecoming. That's just would have been very recently. Well, maybe even not even here yet. I'm getting twisted around, but homecoming is usually in early November, so I guess our homecoming would have been coming up. I'm thinking through this as I go along. I guess our homecoming game would have been coming up maybe in early November, and it didn't happen, won't happen. So now we're looking forward to maybe celebrating it on Core Day weekend when we do have a big reunion schedule next year.
And of course, nobody knows what attendance will look like at spring football yet either. So that remains to be seen as well. Hopefully things get better with the pandemic by then, and we can have bigger crowds at the stadiums than we have right now.
Yeah.
Jim, as a consolation, you might not be able to have your big reunion in November, but you and I will have our own observance of the class of 1960 at a Shoney's near you. How does that sound?
That's right. I was going to talk to you about that, and maybe even give you a choice of Butts on the Creek barbecue if you prefer that over Shoney's.
Ooh, that sounds delicious. Hey,
one of my favorite restaurants up here, Jeff, is called Butts, like Butts, Butts on the Creek.
Okay.
It's a barbecue restaurant overlooking Jonathan Creek in beautiful Maggie Valley.
All right.
Amidst all of its beautiful fall colors.
BigRedPalmetto.store does not sell barbecue. So, unfortunately, you can't win a $25 gift certificate to that. However, they have more than 300 Citadel branded items that you can check out and enjoy, and go there and do some shopping. Christmas is going to be here before you know it, and this is the perfect gift for a Citadel alum, a Citadel parent, a Citadel cadet, a Citadel admirer, or even haters. Get them something from BigRedPalmetto.store. We have a text in. It's not an answer guess for what Jim asked. What a PUP is? Wasn't that what that knob knowledge?
No, POU.
POU. Sorry, don't get PO'd at me for missing that. POU. We'll give people 20 more seconds to send in a guess of what a POU is. I don't know what it is, but
it's a piece of something, I would guess.
All right, well, stand by.
Well, it really wasn't a part of knob knowledge. This, as I said, this glorified plebe, a sophomore who had a Marine Corps background, he that was one of something he knew that was not included in knob knowledge, but he chose to try it out on me just so that I couldn't turn my Play-Doh before second rest. And then at the end of that period, I came up with something for POU.
All right. Well, we don't have
that was the funny part of it.
We're going to get that in just a second. We don't have an correct answer sent to us. So we do have someone texting us with when core day. So we appreciate the person there with the 803 area code sending this text in to tell us that core day 21 will be March 26th through the 28th. March 26th to 28th is core day 2021 on the Citadel campus. Jim, make your reservations today to get to the low country.
Well, when a football season ends in late April, that sort of fits well in the calendar when they might ordinarily have a Parents' Day or homecoming. So I think a lot of classes, like the class of 1960, are planning on having a big shindig on Core Day weekend. So hopefully the Citadel will cooperate and schedule maybe a big conference game, either maybe a Furman or Wofford, in conjunction with Core Day weekend. And if we, for the last time ever, can march onto the field of Johnson-Hagan Stadium and strut our stuff as the famous class of 1960.
All right. Well, just because you've reached 60 years now since your graduation from the Citadel and you've survived 270-plus episodes of Citadel Gray Line, we don't have a correct guess on this knob knowledge. So, Jim, we're going to send the $25 gift certificate to you. I think you've earned it. But tell the good folks watching and listening to Citadel Gray Line the answer to the knob knowledge trivia question presented by Big Red Palmetto Store.
Okay, well, I was somewhat of an shy introvert person. I've changed over the years, and I asked around and tried to ask some of my knob classmates what in the world a POU was, and nobody knew. And so after about 5 days of not being able to turn my Play-Doh until after second rest, I just came up with something on my own. And the story goes like this. Mr. Waddill, have you figured out yet what a POU is? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, what is it? And I said, it's a pissed off underclassman, sir. And he said, wrong, wrap your chin in. I think I went for another week without turning my plate over. But then he disclosed the answer, which was not a part of knob knowledge. He says it stands for a psychiatric observation unit. I think it was Marine Corps terminology, okay? His father, by the way, was a bird colonel in Marine Corps at that time. He says, no, Knob, it's a psychiatric observation unit. I don't know whether he was hinting that maybe I needed to check into POU, but in any event, I got tired of falling, having my weight drop from 140 pounds. One of my classmates said I looked more like a refugee, and maybe I dropped down about 129 pounds. So I just came up with something. Unfortunately, it was not the answer he was looking for.
No, I like your answer better.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
and Jim, you're kind of telling me something that is kind of changing the way I was always instructed in my cadet days. I was always told the cadets of the 50s and 60s and 70s and even up in the early 80s, those cadets going through knob year and more really didn't do anything. It was just like going to summer camp.
Yeah.
They just wore uniforms for the fun of it. Are you telling me that you had what they call, what's that word, a system?
Yes, sir. It was very, very strict. As a matter of fact, I walked 12 punishment tours at the Citadel for excessive demerits first month. Allowed 17 demerits before you walked a tour, and I had 29 demerits. So do the math. I walked 12 punishment tours. My squad leader was sadistic. He hazed, and a big fella in my squad. He was a junior corporal squad leader. Big fella in my squad I won't give his name. He was from Charlotte, but he snapped during after dinner sweat party in the squad leader's room as we were holding M1 rifles above the broomstick balanced between the clothes press and the top bunk and that sort of thing. We used to put on full dress uniforms, raincoats, get on top of a shoebox, on top of a radiator, turned up full steam, things of that nature. Anyhow, this classmate of mine, who's a big fella, he's probably about 6'2", 225 pounds, so not a footballer, he snapped and he turned his butt plate toward this junior corporal and chased him out of the room. And so we were told, chased him all around the barracks and was finally restrained. He called his father that evening and told him what had happened. His father called General Clark, showed up the next morning. And anyhow, make a long story short, this junior corporal was busted. He was, busted to private, was transferred from Bravo Company to Romeo Company, our counterpart, so to speak, in 4th Battalion. 6 months, 120 tours. I no longer had to deal with him. If I could go for a few more seconds, just to show you I wasn't a complete screw off. The next month, when I got a new squad leader, I ended up for the month with 4 merits. Because if you go 1 week, for every week you went without a demerit, you got a merit. So I went from 29 demerits and 12 tours to 4 merits under my new squad leader.
Congratulations. Yeah.
And I will tell you his name. His name was Jim Bennett, the late Jim Bennett from Mount Pleasant or Charleston area. And he was a fine gentleman. As much as I can describe a junior corporal as a fine gentleman, he was a fine gentleman.
Good news and good flashback there.
I'm not going to disclose the name of the culprit.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Jim Waddill, class of 1960. Thank you for taking time to come on here and do this 21st century high technology event with us. Our first video appearance from Brute Jim Waddill in Maggie Valley, North Carolina.
Jeff is Jeff from PC, and I'm Jim from MV. So.
Yes, and we know that you're going to be bouncing back from North Carolina to South Carolina. Yeah. Jeff, we're going to be just logging on to that aforementioned Twitter account, the Jeff _ from the PC, to learn what's going on with the Citadel Bulldogs. And whatever's going on, you'll be all over it.
That is correct. And the basketball season will be upon us very soon, and then another football season could be upon us very soon. So interesting times we live in, as they say.
And we'll be right here come spring when and if there is any kind of football games to be played. We'll have weekly episodes of Citadel Gray Line. As we wrap up, let me tell you about something exciting I've got going on starting the second week of November. If you like the Citadel Gray Line and you like the South, then you might actually enjoy this latest deal. It's a reboot of a show I was doing up until the end of May. I'm going to be relaunching my 2-hour syndicated talk show about the South called The Y'all Show. So if you'll do me a favor, go to y'all.com, YALL.com, the ultimate guide to who's laughing? It's y'all.com.
I'm laughing at the hat. I like it.
Okay. I'm sorry. I see that. He's got his cover there, and he wears that a lot. In fact, I just had to ship one in pink to Myrtle Beach that someone he saw at a place somewhere complimented him on his hat. So check it out, y'all.com, the ultimate guy of the South, where we have, and believe it or not, I put my journalism degree from the Citadel to good use, putting up stories and photos and videos. But we're going to have this daily talk show, 2 hours, all about the South. And I'll be joined by a rock star for this show, a real rock star. Lauren Pritchard, a.k.a. Lolo, is going to be with me. Now, who is that? She was on Broadway. She has been a solo artist, but she also is a songwriter. And, Jeff, you probably are familiar with the song High Hopes.
The traditional song?
No, it's been out in the last couple of years.
Oh, okay. No, I don't think so.
I've heard it at all kind of football games. She co-wrote that song, High Hopes.
Okay, very good.
And she's just had a child, and she's looking to do some media stuff, and so she and I are going to be teaming up. So I'm kind of excited to have a rock star join me for y'all.
Very good.
Every day, and we'll be talking about the South. So we'll be talking about your neighborhood if you're somewhere in the 16 southern states. So that's what I got going on. And, of course, we'll be right back here in November. And, of course, go to our y'all.com Facebook page. Please do that and like us. Please like us. We got to build up a big audience. And, therefore, if you like us on y'all.com on Facebook, every time we have stories up or if we have a video or our talk show up, you'll see that pop up. And if you like what we're doing, share. Share and share a lot. Happy early Thanksgiving. Happy early Christmas to everybody. Happy early, perhaps, Core Day. And we'll be right back here in 2021 to have it all covered. Jeff, thank you once again for all that you've done. Jim, thank you also for being back on the Citadel Gray Line. And, of course, we thank our audience, those who watch and listen to us each week. I want to thank Derek Murdoch of IPS Packaging and Automation. Also want to send a very special thank you to Richard Blanton from the class of 1975, who is with BigRedPalmetto.store and working with us here in this first year of working together with that project and all the knob knowledge stuff. And we just appreciate it. Gentlemen, thank y'all, thank y'all, thank y'all.
Thank you, sir.
And
Jim, good to see you.
Good now, you hear?
And thank you again, once again. This has been Citadel Gray Line from CRM Sports.